Hello everybody, my name is Game Master and I'm back with another Big Finish video. Now I'm doing this video to celebrate Big Finish hitting 20 years of doing Doctor Who audios, so I thought that I would put my top 20 Big Finish audios here in a video for you. Now I don't have a lot of Big Finish, I only have about maybe 71 of them, but so far I'm going to give you what I like so far. So to start it off, we have number 20, Neverland. Neverland it's the season finale of the second season of the 8th Doctor on Big Finish, and I put it at the bottom because you do need the context to fully appreciate Neverland. But I felt that it was a very good season finale, and I don't know, there's just something about it that made me just really enjoy this audio, and it is, of course, it leads into the 40th anniversary special, Zagreus, which is a bit controversial in some ways. But Neverland, I always hear a lot of people say that it is indeed very good, and I agree with them completely. I didn't listen to Neverland for a long time because I didn't have Zagreus for a while, and I knew that Neverland led up to Zagreus. When I got Zagreus, I listened to Neverland, and I was just so blown away. It's such a good story. Romana returns. The Time Lords finally deal with Charlie after the Doctor saved her. And yeah, that's really all I can say about it. It's just a great audio. But because you need the context, it does end up at the bottom. The next one, so number 19 would be Seasons of Fear, another 8th Doctor one. He is my favorite Big Finish Doctor. So Seasons of Fear is the third story in the second season. It was followed by Invaders from Mars. Well, not followed by, it followed Invaders from Mars and Chimes of Midnight. Now, Chimes of Midnight is one of Big Finish's most popular stories and has gone down as a just brilliant Doctor Who audio. So Seasons of Fear had a tough act to follow, and I felt it followed it perfectly. I thought it was really good. It's down here, though, because you do need that. The ending is the ending does lead into Neverland, which was the one I just said. So yeah, it is a main part of the arc that they were doing, but it was good. It's kind of like Keys of Marinus in a way, where they go to a different place each episode, but it is part of a big overarching plot. And I really like stuff like that. That's some of my favorite writing. And Seasons of Fear is a great story. The villain is so good, and I wish he would come back. I wish he was there for more than just this one. But Seasons of Fear is just a great audio. And there are a bit problems with it, because there's some times where I'm like, okay, can we move on now? But overall, such a great audio. Number 18 on this list is The One Doctor. The One Doctor is a very light-hearted story. It's something that if it was done in modern Doctor Who, I would not be surprised that it was done in modern Doctor Who. It gets really funny. It's just so, I guess it makes you so happy. The beginning starts with the Doctor pretending to be an evil mastermind while playing Monopoly. That pretty much sets the tone for the story. The plot is basically a guy and his wife are pretending to be the Doctor and his companion and get rich off it. It's something that I'm surprised wasn't done until now, until this story. It's very light-hearted again, as I say. It's just such a good audio. Like, it's so good. It has Mel and Six, which they need to do more of Mel and Six. And the guy's TARDIS, his TARDIS, which they call the STARDIS, takes the form of a porta potty, basically, and the takeoff noise, you can hear the TARDIS takeoff noise as well as hearing the toilet flush. It's so good. This story does have maybe one scene or two where I wasn't that into it, but overall, it's just so good. It's down here at the bottom because a lot of my other stories just have something that gets me more than this one. But it's by no means bad. It's number 18. So there you go. Number 17 is one that I am currently listening to now, The Eye of the Scorpion. Now this is an introduction story as well to a companion called Aramim for the Fifth Doctor. And I have to say, I did not expect a lot going into this one. But it has so far, I've really enjoyed it. I'm only on part 3 right now. I'm near the end of part 3. So, we just had a great scene where the Doctor basically stands up to this person accusing Aramim of not being the rightful heir. And it's so good. The Doctor, how do I put it in a way? I can't really express it, but the Doctor does a great job of defending Aramim, and it's just such a great scene. He does call back to what happened at the beginning of the episode, which I love when stuff like that happens, where at the beginning of a Doctor Who story, something weird happens, and then you found out it's because the Doctor caused that later on. The Doctor was absent for most of part 2. He was like barely in part 2 at all. Part 1 is, the standard, the Doctor pairing me person A and leading to the whole event. But it is leading up to a pretty good climax from what I can hear so far. And that's why it's number 17, because I felt like it has me drawn in more than the other 3 stories did. Also, I'm liking the Fifth Doctor more and more as I hear him on Big Finish. His TV run, that's something different. But on Big Finish, I like him more and more, and this story is so good, I recommend you buy it. It's just so good. Number 16 is Scherzo. This is a great story. It's the start of what I count as Season 3 of the 8th Doctor stories on Big Finish. And it starts, you do need, the reason why the story's down there, you do need the context of the 40th anniversary of Zagreus. Because what happens at the end of Zagreus leads into this story. So, basically what you need to know is the Doctor's going to a different universe, a divergent universe, where time, laws of time, stuff like that, they don't apply there. And this is a great example of that, because it's literally, the cast is just Paul McGann and India Fisher. So for like 2 hours, it's just the Doctor and Charlie talking. They're just walking around a white room endlessly. They have no senses. It's just so good. It's written by Robert Sherman, and I highly recommend that story. Number 15 on this list is Live 34. This is Doctor Who done in the style of a news broadcast. Literally, that's it. Where it's like you're watching a news broadcast. Well, not watching. You're listening to a news broadcast. Because the Doctor and all the other companions show up like as certain people. Like, he'll say like, okay, now we're going to Charlotte Singh with the ambassador for da-da-da, and then it's the Doctor's voice. Like, it's such a good story. I love the plot. It's not an alien type story. It's no like battling alien monsters. It's a political one. Well, the Doctor has to show the people of this planet they're on that the person that's running, one of them, is, how dirty he is, how much, bad things this guy has done. And I love stories like that. Stories that don't really feature an alien villain, to me, I really enjoy. And this one blew me away at the end. And of course, it's the 7th Doctor being the 7th Doctor. Oh, he's so good. But yeah, it's really good. I highly recommend it. It's down low because, again, there's a lot of other stories that do engage me a bit more. But for what this story is, it's really good. Number 14 is Storm Warning. This is Paul McGann's first Doctor Who thing he's ever done after the movie. So after the movie, we had nothing of the 8th Doctor from 1996 going on. All we had were the books. I was the Virgin New Adventure books, the PDAs, and then the EDAs. That's all we had. We had comics, but nothing too much. And then Big Finish was founded in 1999. They got Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy to come do some stories. And in 2001, they released this story with Paul McGann as the Doctor. And Paul McGann was at this time the current Doctor. So it was a very big deal back then that they got the current Doctor to come and play his role in an audio drama. And it's down this low because it is very much an introductory story. You can feel how much of this is a season opener. You can very much feel how that is. And of course, it introduces Charlie, one of my favorite companions. And it gives you a good idea of who the 8th Doctor is. Of course, there are other stories that delve into that more, much like Scherzo, Chimes of Midnight. There's a bunch of other stories that delve into his personality more and show you how the 8th Doctor is. But for this story, again, it's an introductory story. I highly recommend you buy it. It's probably one of the first things a lot of Big Finish listeners buy, because they're like, oh god, it's McGann. You gotta do it. And yeah, this was my... And it's on this list as well because it's very personal to me, because it was the first Big Finish story that I actually bought. So it was very much a big deal to me. So yeah, that's also another reason why it's on this list. It was the first Big Finish story I bought, not the first Big Finish story I listened to, but the first Big Finish story I bought. So it will always hold a place in my heart for this one. Number 13 is Death and the Queen. I got Death and the Queen maybe 2 months ago. Because Big Finish was doing a big sale, because the 10th Doctor Adventures Volume 3 came out, and I was just browsing through Big Finish randomly, like you do, and I saw Death and the Queen, the single release was on sale for $2.99 on download. And I jumped at that, and I got it, because originally it was like $6.99 or something like that, and I listened to it, and I was just so happy that I could hear my favorite Doctor, David Tennant, in Big Finish, another thing I love. So 2 of my favorite things collided there for Doctor Who, and I was so happy. The story itself is very, very good. The story is very much, you're pretty much listening to a season 4 story. David Tennant's great, Catherine Tate's great, the story's just great. It's on here this low though because there are better Big Finish stories. It's on this list again this high because my favorite Doctor, it's the first Big Finish story of his that I have listened to, and I can't wait to listen to more. That's why it's on here this low at number 14. So yeah, now I'm definitely gonna go and buy the other 10th Doctor Adventures from Big Finish. Definitely when I save up enough money, because Big Finish take your money. At number 12, I have one from the Villains Trilogy. Now I'll say it right now, all of the Villains Trilogy is on this list. It's not like I picked 2 of the Villains Trilogy. All of the Villains Trilogy is on this list. The one that comes the lowest is Omega. And I know I'm not the only one who's alone on that, because I believe Omega is the weakest out of them all. If you don't know what the Villains Trilogy is, it basically takes Doctors 5, 6, 7, put them against a big villain of theirs, and kind of flesh out the villain a bit. Now this one's claim to fame is probably the cliffhanger at the end of Part 3. I'm not going to spoil that cliffhanger at the end of Part 3, but the twist that they throw at you is so good. It's probably one of the best twists I've ever heard, because I remember listening to this one, not doing anything, I was just sitting around listening to Big Finish. And then when that twist happened, my mouth just dropped. I was so shocked about it. The story itself it's an I didn't really care for the plot too much. Part 1 is a bit iffy. Part 2 I think stepped up the pace. Part 3 has that amazing twist, and Part 4 is great because now I know what happens to the TARDISes after their owner dies, because the Doctor explains that. He explains pretty much everything that's happened so far. And it's a great story. kind of shows you who Omega is and the conflict he's going through in this story. So that's it. That's pretty much Omega. The other Villainous Trilogy stories are, of course, on here, but I don't think we'll be seeing them for quite some time. The next one is the Marion Conspiracy. This is, from what I hear from people, is one of Big Finish's early classics, and after listening to it, I can wholeheartedly agree. This is also an introduction to a companion known as Evelyn Smythe. When I first heard about Evelyn, that she was an old woman, she's an older woman, I was a bit cautious. I'm like, oh, I don't know that'll work. I heard a lot of people say it does work, but before I was like, I don't know. So I listened to Marion Conspiracy, and I just loved it. It was so good. Evelyn is such a great character. This is also the start to Colin Baker's Doctor turning into a more kinder, less brash, rude Doctor later on. But it's so good. This is how Colin Baker should have been on TV, and I'm so glad that he is so much better on Big Finish, because Colin Baker is an amazing Doctor. But yeah, this is again low because it is an introduction, and it does slow down at times, because they have to ease Evelyn into the role of companion. But it is good. It's really good. I highly recommend it. It's a great story. This story made me want to go buy a bunch of other Evelyn stories, which I now own and I'm so happy for. In fact, Evelyn appears on this list a couple more times. So, that's all I can say about it. The next one is The Fires of Vulcan. Now, this story is basically Fires of Pompeii, done as a historical story. I kind of enjoy historicals. They're a bit of hit or miss for me. There's some historicals where I'm like, oh, that wasn't too good, and some where I'm like, oh, that was really good, I want more. This is one of those where I'm like, it's really good, I want more. Now, I love Fires of Pompeii, the 10th Doctor story. It's one of my favorite 10th Doctor stories. It also features Peter Capaldi before he was the Doctor, and it calls back to it later on. And when I heard that this one was also featured in Pompeii, I'm like, oh, great, I kind of want to listen to this. And it also has almost the same name, Fires of Vulcan, Fires of Pompeii. I mean, come on now. And this story, I believe, is better than Fires of Pompeii. It features Seven and Mel, so it's Seven early on in his life. He's not yet super dark and manipulative, which is my favorite type of Seven. But he is very good in this. This story had me from the moment it began, when the Doctor tells Mel why they can't leave Pompeii, even though the volcano is going to erupt and destroy the town. It's a great story. It's also, I believe, one of Big Finish's early classics. I hear nothing but good things for this story, and I highly recommend it if you want a good start to Big Finish. Number 9 now is Jubilee. See, I told you Evelyn was going to return. Jubilee is the inspiration for the story Dalek, the Chris Eccleston story. They were both written by the same writer, but the writer took a scene from Jubilee and put it in Dalek, the scene where the Doctor and the Dalek are in the room talking. Both the Doctors act the same, going like, let me the hell out, but it changes. 9 just has hate for that Dalek. He hates that Dalek with every fiber in his being. 6 feels a bit more compassion to it. It kind of feels a bit sorry for the Dalek. Still realizes it's a Dalek, but it feels just that bit sorry for it. Jubilee is a great 6th Doctor story. Of course, written by Robert Sherman, who is a great writer, and I wish he would come back to write some more Doctor Who stories. Evelyn is featured greatly in this one. The beginning starts off by basically it's just making fun of movie commercials in a way. It's basically also deals with, like, you know how Nazis are nowadays. They're like the butt of the joke when it comes to it. It's basically doing that, but with Daleks. which is a great idea. And the ending is very good as well. You gotta have a good ending to a good story. And I highly enjoyed this one. And there's a scene where they make you think Davros is in it, but it's not Davros. I won't tell you who it is. But when I found out who it was in that chair, that wheelchair that they said, oh god. Number 8 is another one from the Villains Trilogy. It is Davros. And from Davros being here, you can tell which one of the Villains Trilogy I like more. Now this is the 6th Doctor in this one. So Davros, this story, it deals with a bit, how Davros, how he dealt with life on his home planet a bit. There is the short stories, I, Davros, which I will get, but I hear that it's very depressing, so I do hear you need to listen to Davros first before listening to those, or you should do that, which I've done now. And I believe Davros to be a very good story because the plot, as well as listening about Davros, is very good. It's like a wealthy man and his wife want to get Davros back to help them run the economy. I believe they're still on Earth. I don't actually remember, but I believe they're still on Earth to help them run the economy because they need someone smart to do it. Who better than Davros? And the Doctor shows up, and then he finds out that Davros is there, and he doesn't trust Davros. I mean, would you trust Davros after what he's done? And he ends up working alongside Davros, trying to see what he's going on with, and he starts I guess the best is sabotaging Davros' little experiments that Davros is doing there for the man and his wife. The wife is basically a sympathizer. She says that Davros isn't that bad, look on the bright things of all he's done. That's basically her. The man, the husband, if I can remember correctly, just wants profit. I mean, but it's a great story from the Villains Trilogy. Not the best. The best one's to come. But easily, it's so good. The reason it's pretty low down here and not higher in the top 5 is because of that ending. And the ending was a bit abrupt and a bit anticlimactic to everything that's happened so far. But ending aside, it's a great story. The next one is Spare Parts. This story is Genesis of the Cybermen. It's how the Cybermen were made. I know we've now had World Enough in Time / The Doctor Falls that goes about the Cybermen as well. To me, Spare Parts is the true origin of the Cybermen. And I believe they took some parts from Spare Parts. Was not intended to be a pun. They took some bits from Spare Parts and put it into World Enough in Time. So there you go. I believe there's an episode with David Tennant where Mickey calls him. It's a Cyberman story where Mickey calls himself a spare part as a reference to this story. But this story was going to be on TV. It wasn't for reasons I can't remember. I believe it might have been too expensive to do. And it's such a good 4-parter. It has 5 in Nyssa alone, no Tegan, no Adric, and it's such a great story because you realize what the people of Mondas, what they were thinking when they were turning people into Cybermen. And there's a scene with one of the people you meet after, because when you meet the people in the story, you're like, okay, some of you will get converted. It's a no-brainer. But when one of the people gets converted and they come back, it's so sad. It's just so soul-crushing. And it's such a good moment. And in that way, it's such a good moment. And the Doctor knows, going into this, he can't make a big difference, because the Cybermen have to come. Because he's like, think of all the things all the good things that eventually will happen because of the Cybermen. Civilizations will be united. Kind of like what he did in Genesis of the Daleks, where he's like, a bunch of peace treaties will happen because of them. But they leave thinking they've made a good thing happen, that they've postponed it a bit, They leave thinking they've made a good change, when actually they've made no change at all. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Spare parts was now us getting into the good stuff. So to start off, we have Project Lazarus here. Project Lazarus is part of an arc, the Project arc, the Forge arc. This arc on Big Finish goes from, it's mainly 6 and 7, but I believe 7 took over after this story. So it is the sequel to Project Twilight, which is on this list and will come later, which is the Sixth Doctor story. Project Lazarus is the sequel to that. Now, I listened to Project Lazarus heading to see Avengers Endgame. And I listened to it on the little train there. And I listened to part 1. Part 1's the talky bit. Where they get to point A, point E, point B, point C, you know, all that. And I listened to part 1. When part 1 ended, Endgame started. I watched Endgame. I cried. And then when I was walking back, I put on part 2 of Project Lazarus. And it was very much action orientated, and I was in the mood for action because I just saw Endgame, and it delivered completely on the action. It's so good, and when a certain character dies, of course Evelyn's in the story, and Evelyn just can't take it. She can't take that this certain character has died. And it just crushes her, and it crushes the Doctor to see Evelyn so sad. But part 3, the 7th Doctor takes over, and this is 7 near the end of his life. So after he's done all the Ace, Hex, Chris, Roz, Bernie Summerfield, the Virgin New Adventures, after that's all done, he's near the end of his life. He comes across a random place and sees the 6th Doctor. Now, this isn't actually the 6th Doctor. I'm going to say that now. It's a bit of a spoiler. It's not actually the 6th Doctor. I'm not going to say what it is. But yeah, I felt part 3 was the weakest part of this 4-parter. And I do felt it was a bit weaker than the first one, Project Twilight. But it's still a great story. I would listen to this story again in a heartbeat. I think I might actually do that now, and when this video is done, listen to Project Lazarus again. But part 4 picked it up again. It brought it back up after I was losing interest in part 3. Part 4 put me back in the mood again. And it's so good. It's such a good story, but there are bits where I was like, iffy on it, that I wasn't in the first one. We're in the top 5 now. Now this, at the moment, are my top 5 Big Finish stories. This could very well change, because I don't have a lot of Big Finish. So keep that in mind. But number 5 is Invaders from Mars. Yes, it's Invaders from Mars. This is the season premiere of Season 2 of the 8th Doctor. Now, a lot of people don't really like Invaders from Mars, and I don't understand why. I thought it was really good. It does get a bit, it's a lighthearted story. I'm not going to tell you that. It is not dark in any way. Though the way the villains die, though, might be considered a bit dark. But this story, it's another almost historical. It's basically on the War of the Worlds, where Orson Welles, claimed that, aliens are attacking and all that, and it basically takes, what if aliens were attacking? And I found it to be very good. To me, this is like a true 8th Doctor story, where the 8th Doctor can be at his, most 8th Doctorness. And I love this story. I listened to it all in one day. I actually started listening to it when I was in school. Just doing not homework, but our teacher gave us the entire class to do an assignment, and I listened to Invaders from Mars from it, and I was so happy. It was such a good moment. And I listened to it on the ride home when I finished it, and it was such a good story. I can't praise the story enough, as I already have. But it's really good, and I really recommend it. Number 4 is Chimes of Midnight. Chimes of Midnight. What can I say about this story that hasn't already been said? It is one of the best Doctor Who stories ever done, in my opinion. It is for sure one of the best Big Finish stories ever made. When a lot of people tell you about 8th Doctor on Big Finish, they'll probably talk about Chimes of Midnight. It's a classic. What can I say? It's one of Big Finish's classic stories. Um, it's so good. The best way I can describe it is a murder mystery turned on its head. Is the best way I can really describe it without giving away too much. It is, however, part of an arc, so you do need to listen to Storm Warning for a lot of the arc stuff for the Eighth Doctor. But the arc aside, putting that arc aside for us for a moment, it's such a good story. I listened to it all in one go, which is how you should listen to Chimes. And it was such a good story. It's also a Christmas story with murder and suicides. That's what I want for my Christmas specials. I don't know about you. I mean, giving joy to people, push that aside. I want murder in my Christmas specials. But I do believe that this story does characterize 8 a lot better than some of the ones. You can see how the 8th Doctor gets when he's up against a certain foe. That I guess the best way is like he really does not like this foe that they're going up against. Charlie, India Fisher, just great in this story. Charlie is a main focus of the story as well. It's because of her as well that this whole thing's happening. But it's such a good story. I can't praise it as much as I already have. But there's been so many videos of how good Chimes is, so go look at those ones. We're in the top 3. So number 3 is Project Lazarus. This is the one before Project Twilight. Sorry, I said that wrong. It's Project Twilight. This is the one before Project Lazarus. Project Twilight is Six and Evelyn, and it's so good. It is so good. This is the moment when Big Finish decided, okay, we're going to do an arc. A big arc. An arc that's going to have repercussions. And boy, does it have repercussions. A character you meet in this one leads to something that happens with Seven. Something big that happens to Seven. The villains in the story, I'm not going to tell you. I really wish I could, but I'm not going to tell you. Are very much part of the Doctor Who lore. This is a dark story. It's not for the faint of heart. If you can't handle death, if you can't handle murder, if you can't handle listening to people like screaming while they're being attacked, don't listen to it. But you should listen to it anyway because it's so good. The story. Oh my god! When the Doctor met the people, like the big people, the people you were hearing, besides Doctor and Evelyn talking, I was like, oh god, this is not gonna turn out well. And it's so good. I don't know what else I can say about it. It's just so good. It's a big thing in Doctor Who because of all the stuff that it ends up leading up to. It's the start of Hex in a way. It's the start of the Forge. Not the start of the Forge. It's the first mention of the Forge. And the ending is great when the Doctor and the villain fight each other on the cliff. Brilliant scene. So I don't know what else I can say about it other than the fact that it's just a great story. Number 2, my second favorite Big Finish story of all time is Master, the last story in the Villains trilogy. This is a dark, disturbing story, and I love dark, disturbing stories so much. This is, to me, pure 7 in a way. It tells you why the Master is the way he is as well. And the way they tell you it. If you are only a modern Who fan, you've only watched modern Doctor Who, you never touched classic Doctor Who, never read any of the books, this is your first story going into Big Finish because it's titled Master, and you're like, oh, the Master, he was in that episode with Peter Capaldi, I'm gonna watch this one. You're gonna lose a lot of the whole, oh, the Doctor's a good guy, through and through. that's gonna go away at the end of this. And I knew going into this that, I've known from a while that the Doctor's not a completely nice guy. He's done some things. I mean, the Time War has happened. Seven has done some really, really dark stuff in his books. Many incarnations of the Doctor have just done horrible acts as well. But this is really good. It's really good. And the Master they got, Geoffrey Beevers, is one of my favorite Masters of all time. If you don't know what Master Geoffrey Beevers played, he played like the crispy, decayed Master, which is the Master's final body. It is not Anthony Ainley's Master. I mean, it's not Roger Delgado's Master. It is a different body that was then decayed because of a certain event that happened in a Big Finish story called The Two Masters, which you can go buy. I don't have it yet, but I know what happens in it. But this story is so good. The big plot is the Master's in a town called Perfugium, and he has no idea who he is. He's just called Dr. John Smith. And when the Master starts to appear and Dr. John Smith starts to disappear, I felt sad because I like Dr. John Smith. I didn't want him to go. I knew he had to, but I'm like, I don't want him to go. And the ending, where the Doctor meets Death. Death herself appears in this story. The ending was, basically Death telling the Doctor, you have to kill someone. Anyone you want. I like to think it's someone random that the Doctor killed. He's telling the story to someone. I also like to think he killed this person he's telling the story to as well. And the last line of this story is so heart-wrenching. You're so sad. It's the Doctor basically saying to himself, to the Master, I will save you. Oh, I love this story so much. I can't say anymore. I just love. You need to listen to it. And my favorite Big Finish story I have is The Reaping. Yes, it's The Reaping. I know I just said Master was so good, but this story to me surpasses Master. Now, if you listen to The Reaping, you might be thinking, why would you say The Reaping? Because I've heard a lot of people say it's good. It's really good. There are a couple YouTubers I listen to who go oh, The Reaping's their favorite Sixth Doctor story. And I agree. It is my favorite Sixth Doctor story. It's my favorite Big Finish story as well. Let me set the plot for you here. Six and Perry stop their travels because Perry has to attend a funeral. Someone she knew when she was a girl. Her best friend's dad has died. And she finds this out after she and the Doctor go to a place where all of history is recorded here, and it shows that her friend's dad has been found dead. So she asks the Doctor to take her to the funeral. The Doctor agrees, So she goes to the funeral and she meets her family, who she hasn't seen since not Dragonfire, Planet of Fire, where she left with 5. To her family, it's been maybe I think 6 months. To Perry, it's been years. And her family, they just kind of assumed that she went missing, Because to them, Perry went on a ship and never came back. So some of them think she died. Some of them think she's just hanging around wherever she stayed at. And the way they talk about Perry, where Perry overhears her so-called best friend and her mom saying how maybe life was better without Perry kind of being here, is so sad to Perry, because she was thinking oh, she'd come back to the funeral, see her family and friends again, and everything would be happy. And it's not. Because then you have the Cybermen show up and try to convert the people of this town. They've already taken control of the police force using the little thing in the ears. the Doctor in this story, this was my first Sixth Doctor story I ever had. Like, watching, I didn't see any of his episodes on TV, I never listened to an audio of his, didn't read any of his books up until this point. When I listened to The Reaping, I loved Sigs. I loved him. He is now one of my favorite Doctors of all time. Colin Baker knows how to play the Doctor. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you think Six is a bad Doctor, listen to it, Big Finish. Listen to this story, because this turned me into a Sixth Doctor fan. It's so good. There are some scenes in it where you're like, oh my god, no. You know, I can't believe this happened. And the ending is very sad as well. I'm not going to spoil the ending because it's so good. But it's a really good ending. All I'll say about it is the ending makes it so like Peri has no reason to stay at her home. You know, in her home town anymore. It's really good. Such a good story. I've talked about it as long as I could. I love it. I adore this story to bits. It is saved on my phone here that I'm holding in my Big Finish app. Always on my phone. It will forever be on my phone because I love this story so much. And I could always just, whenever I listen to it, I've listened to this story so much, I know what they're going to say before they say it. I've listened to this story, I can tell you a total of maybe 12 times now. And now I can, like, predict what they're going to say. Well, because I've listened to it so much, I know what they're going to say right when they say it. It's really good. That's all I can say. It's really good, and I highly recommend that you play it. So that's my top 20 Big Finish audios in celebration of Big Finish, you know, being 20 with Doctor Who, celebrating them, creating 20 years worth of Doctor Who audios. Here's to 20 more. I love Big Finish so much. I want to thank Big Finish for making me more of a Doctor Who fan than I already was. And I just adore them so much. Their audio dramas are so fun to listen to. Even some of the bad ones. So that's all I can say. Thank you, Big Finish. Hopefully you get to make more Doctor Who audios. I will continue to happily buy, because I still have a lot more audios. The most recent audio I have is Death and the Queen. But for main range, I only have 100. Like the story 100. So now I need to work on 101s as well. So I'm gonna go now. My next, stories to buy will be all the 100 from 101 to when they put the. So it'll be from Absolution to the Wrong Doctors. I'm gonna look at stories from there and see what I want to buy, and that'll be my next stories to get from Big Finish. So that's all I can say. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please share this video. Get some Big Finish audios while you can. Well, I shouldn't say while you can. Just get them. They're so good. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.